All right, here we go. Welcome today. Hopefully we're having a happy Friday here. Hey, perhaps put into the chat, what are your weekend plans here? What are your weekend plans? All right, I plan on watching the Super Bowl, maybe not the whole thing. I'll zero in on commercials, but also kind of curious, watching some of the game itself play out. One thing that I always liked about back in the day when I was a teenager or younger, used to like to watch the old NFL highlights of past Super Bowls, and they made it very dramatic, and it was kind of cool to see some of the Vikings teams in the Super Bowls, but of course, we're 0 for 4 in the Super Bowls. But commercials have seemed to become very important elements of the Super Bowl, as well as the halftime show. So those are things to take a look at. But looking at here, we've got some schoolwork that has to go on, and of course, can't forget about sleep. Take advantage of opportunities for yourself as well. It's probably the big thing, Weather-wise, it's going to be a little cold. So if you are going to go outside, make sure you cover up and all that stuff, stay safe and warm, because, we're going to be looking at some negative temps, but we're in Minnesota. We can handle it. So make sure, I guess the big takeaway here is just make sure you take some time for yourself over the weekend here. All right. Today, we'll kind of keep this a little quick, but I do want to, again, spotlight African-American history here. So we'll take a moment here to do that. But then also talk a little bit about next week, because in terms of us actually meeting each other, it's going to be a short week. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about that, and then see if there's any questions about this assignment that is due for today, Canada and the Great Depression. But I have a little video clip here highlighting, because it is the Super Bowl weekend, and there are some changes to the Super Bowl. And in the Super Bowl, we're going to find that there are going to be a number of women who will be either coaches or as an official for the game, as well as some of the women are women of color, African American. And so take a moment here to spotlight this, as we are going to be going into Super Bowl weekend here. And let's take a look at this little recent news clip about women in professional sports like football, and the meanings that go with it, and think about some takeaways as well.
I have a precious little girl that is watching her mom, not just on a football field, but daily at home. And I want her to know, seeing it, believing it, and you can do it.
That is Sarah Thomas, who this Sunday will become the very first woman to officiate at a Super Bowl. It will also be a Super Bowl with 2 female coaches. Those coaches both on the staff of the Buccaneers. CBS This Morning Saturday co-host Dana Jacobson spoke with 2 other female trailblazers, he's trying to say, who have transformed America's most popular sport. And Dana joins us now from the CBS Sports Network set. Pretty nice set there. Dana, good morning to you.
Good morning and thank you. On the latest Tides report card for gender hiring practices, the NFL got a seat, said to be lagging in gender equity, especially at the team level. But there has been progress. The number of female coaches in the NFL has risen steadily over the past 5 seasons, with 8 women breaking through in 2020, taking their place on the sidelines. Jennifer King just made history as the first Black woman to become a full-time coach in the NFL.
You know, just kind of living in the moment. I never really think about it that much.
But she wants people to know her success with the Washington football team is no accident.
It was a very long road to get here. It took a while. It's not something I didn't just pop up. And it's been a long time coming.
Coach Ron Rivera, when he first hired you, he said your resume is as good as any young male coach. You're learning from the bottom up and that you weren't there to be a token. What does it mean to you to know that?
It means a lot.
Now an assistant running backs coach, King remembers falling in love with football during her childhood in North Carolina. When you were a kid and you were playing football, you didn't see women on the sidelines coaching.
No, definitely not. So that part never really entered my mind because I didn't see it. You know, we always talk about representation, and I didn't really have that at all. I watched a lot of football, but I never saw anyone that looked like me participating. King chased her dream anyway. She coached women's college basketball, working as a police officer by day to make ends meet. She even knows what it's like to play professional football, which she did in a women's league for more than a decade. Ever have anyone say you can't do this because you're a woman? I have not. Well, no one that matters, I guess we could say.
King says to the players, she's just another coach.
I don't think people quite understand like the psyche of the pro athletes. They don't care. They just want to be better and extend their careers. And if you can help them do that, that's all that matters.
I'm often asked if, did I receive pushback from players? Did I sense any feeling from players that they were bothered by my gender? And the answer is no. Players care only if you're contributing to the success of the team.
Amy Trask was the first female CEO in NFL history. And in the 1980s, when she attended her first league owners meeting as a lawyer for the Oakland Raiders, she experienced what she calls a funny moment.
Someone walked up to me, the owner of a team, and asked me to get him coffee. And it was that moment when I looked around and I realized, oh, I'm the only woman in this room that's not on the catering staff. And then shortly thereafter, the meeting started and I sat down at the table and he looked over and you could just see the blood draining from his face. And every league owners meeting after that, he always walked up to me and asked me if I would like some coffee and might he get some for me.
Let's go! In her nearly 30 years with the Raiders, fans lovingly called Trask the Princess of Darkness.
Kansas City did a tremendous job.
She's now a CBS Sports NFL analyst.
I'm asked all the time, was I tested because I was a woman? And the answer is, I don't know. Because people are tested all the time. But fair enough, let's assume I was tested because of my gender. What's the best thing to do when you're tested? Pass the damn test.
That's where King says she's putting her energy, focusing on doing a good job. The Super Bowl is going to see 2 female coaches on the sidelines with Tampa Bay, and you've said that women's presence is not a coincidence. What did you mean by that?
I just believe that, the cultures that these coaches are building who are willing to open up their staffs for everyone, those cultures become successful, and success brings on wins.
Coach King told me she has already gotten messages of encouragement from parents telling her their daughters are interested in football and in becoming football coaches. As she said, by seeing it, they're realizing they can do things they never thought they could. Anthony, something she didn't have, that representation.
Some very impressive folks there, Dana. Thank you. Well, those Amy Trask stories.
Oh, I was going to
really
say,
great.
Amy, my new best friend. I like when she says when you're being tested,
yeah.
What do you do? Pass the damn test.
Well
I love it.
said.
And Jennifer King, I like her too. When they said you can't do this, did that ever get to you? She said no one said it who mattered to her.
Yeah.
Also makes a difference.
Yes.
Tony, if it's somebody you respect
100%.
and you don't care about, it's okay.
Well, you got to know.
Great, Dana.
You got to know who matters. That's
Yes.
Well, I was going to say, and if you're saying it right now, maybe you don't matter. Ask yourself that.
That's right.
Okay. Any feedback, like I always do when I do stuff like this. I always ask for some feedback or anything that kind of pops out and stands out. There's a lot of good nuggets in there as well. Not only is we're dealing with or this applying to Black History Month, but we can also look at just some of the issues related to, in this case, women as well, being spotlighted here in this little news bit as well. From my own personal experience, I remember early on in athletics, some of my coaches and mentors were women who coached, and we're talking about in the 1970s here, and so we can find examples of this throughout our experiences as society is growing and changing and evolving. All right. Anyone have any thoughts? You can put it in the chat as well if you feel more comfortable in putting it in the chat with that. So there we go. We have just it is Super Bowl weekend, and it's just another layer added to it that might be of intrigue and for you to watch and see. Okay. Our assignment, which is due today, and the assignment is Canada and the Great Depression. And looking at it, as you look at the approaches of either Prime Minister King, or Prime Minister Bennett, how different are their styles of approaching the Great Depression? And so we're getting at their philosophy. How different really is their philosophy here? Feel free to put it in the chat or unmute and let me know. How different? Well, I know a few have turned in, but if you haven't started this assignment, this is one that's going to take some time to get started, get going. I think what we'll find out is that their approach really isn't a whole heck of a lot different from each other. And in many ways, when we look at Canada and compare it to Canada's approach to the Great Depression in the United States is a little bit more aggressive, or a lot more aggressive in trying to approach the issues related to the Great Depression here. All right. Where in Canada, in many ways, they are just gutting it through in some ways. We look at it where, one looks at him at perhaps maybe like King initially not doing anything, balance the budget as best as you can. The economy would write itself. Bennett, not much a whole heck of a lot different. He was very traditional approach, looked at law and order, tried to change, but he'll lose an election. So, all right, let's get this task taken care of. It's important to be able to know how Canada is able to do to get through the Great Depression, and then we can make some comparison pieces between Canada and the United States, and then we'll bring Mexico into it next week. All right. So next week, as we know, we only have 2 days next week, really, of live Google Meets. But bear in mind that the days that you are not in school, there will be work for this class to be done. I will open up an assignment, Mexico's approach to the Great Depression next week. So look for that. And then also, because it's only 2 days next week, Masai and I, we're going to have to make some adjustments here. And so the Google Meets might be a little bit longer because we need to make sure that we cover some information as well. Monday is a no school day. Tuesday is a teacher professional development day. And then Friday is a transition workshop kind of day as we're going to get ready to go to distant learning, from distant learning to hybrid learning. And so again, we've got only 2 days, and we will jump in and take a look at Mexico's approach to the Great Depression. Plus, I do anticipate hopefully next week that we'll know more about what the structure of the class is going to be when we go from distant back to hybrid learning. So we have that. All right. So that is what I have for you today. Wish for you to have a good rest of the day. Stay on the Google Meet if you have questions. If not, you can exit and have a great weekend.